Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction. I, did I write that or did you write that? Because I loved it. Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today to kind of, I guess, kick things off. The important things are that I'm an Enneagram 3 and my Myers Briggs is ENFP. If that means something to you, awesome. If it doesn't, that's also fine. But I love personal growth, I love to study growth. And so I was so excited to be able to talk about this topic today with you guys. I want to start with talking about how growth is continuous. I was born in a country called Namibia in southern Africa, and my mom was American, my father is Namibian. And so I grew up kind of between cultures, learning how to assimilate very quickly as kind of a coping mechanism, but it also, I think, has turned into a skill. I got to be surrounded by beautiful nature growing up, and just in an environment that let me try new things. And I'm really thankful for that. I think as a seedling, if we're going to use the plant metaphors, as a seedling, this was a really wonderful environment to grow up in. I moved to the US when I was 6, and my parents put me into piano lessons, and I discovered my first creative love. Music was something that brought me so much joy, and it brought other people joy when I played music. And it was something that I felt really comfortable in and very confident in. And as somebody who was always a little bit unsure about her place in the world, it was something that I think I really needed. And I started violin at age 9, and was blessed with teachers who really helped to nurture my growth, who helped to nurture my love of the instruments, um, as well as my technical skills. When I got a little bit older, I ended up with a teacher who was excellent in so many ways, but she also kind of put the fear of God in me. And unfortunately, I started to grow a little bit more in fear. I was a little bit worried, more, not a little bit, I became more and more worried about making mistakes. And this kind of led to a lifelong struggle with performance anxiety. Don't know if anybody here has felt that before. Um, but the reason I wanted to talk about growth being continuous, I think when we think about growth, we always see it as this positive thing. And we forget that if we're not intentional, we can grow in the wrong direction. And as children, we don't have a lot of control over that growth. But as we grow up, we have responsibility, I think, to learn how to shape ourselves into ways that will help us grow into our best versions. I think about how sometimes I plant little seeds to go in my garden, and if they're not close enough to a light source, they will grow fast and they will grow so tall, and they will not have the root structure or the stem strength to support them, and they're going to die. So that's an example of growth that is not really beneficial for the plant. And in the same way, we can grow in fear, we can grow in these ideas of ourselves that are not helpful to us. And so as a teenager, I was kind of stuck in this loop of not wanting to be in the spotlight, not wanting to take solos, not wanting to sit first chair in orchestra. And it became a self-perpetuating growth downward spiral cycle that I'm still working on today. As a teenager, something else that I started to do was take pictures and make silly videos. And that was something that I really enjoyed because it was a way that I could present myself. It was a way that I could edit myself, and that was a lot less scary than real-time performing. And that kind of leads me to the next part. Good growth takes time. When I was in high school, YouTube came out, and vlogging came out. And I was obsessed with watching people talk about their lives. And I was like, I can do this. People want to hear about my homeschool life. So let's. So I started to play with editing. I started to, I would sit in front of the camera and talk about the most mundane little things in the world. Like looking back, there's a reason there's no audio on this. Nobody needs to hear this stuff. And these are private YouTube videos. They will forever remain private. But I keep them there to humble myself. And also so I can see how much I've grown. But the thing that I had was time. I had time to play. I had time to sit in front of the camera. I had time to kind of figure out Windows Movie Maker, which led later on to other tools, which I think were a little bit easier to use. And then in college, I got to take these skills and make videos for my school job, which was at the Career Center. So I made videos about how to study that better. I would interview career counselors about things that students can do to help set themselves up for success. I also made videos for school assignments, which, again, pretty silly, but a lot of fun. I had so much fun doing this stuff. I changed majors twice in school and ended up landing in music. I came back to it and said, I really love this. And one of the reasons was because I joined a band and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm a musician. It is actually fun to play music. I want to study this forever. Not thinking about the long term, like, what am I actually going to do with this degree? But I had fun with it. And then this all kind of culminated in a senior thesis project where I made a 30-minute documentary about the impact of music education on children who grew up in high-stress environments, down to even drawing out animations. I scanned pieces of paper into a printer because I had no idea how else to do animations. But I had a lot of fun doing it and just trying things out. I didn't have any formal training in this, so a lot of it was just figuring things out as I go. And that, I think, is the gift of time. I ended up, my senior year, also getting married to one of my bandmates, Adrian, who's in the back, which, if you're doing the math, I do every year because I forget. It's been 14 years. And right after graduation, we moved to Hiroshima, Japan to teach English because we were both music majors. And what are we going to do with that? So I continued to use my vlogging skills to share with our friends and family back home some of the stuff that we were experiencing in our day-to-day life there in Hiroshima. I was gifted, right, as a wedding gift, I was gifted a cool little camcorder, and so I was always walking around like trying to just get every little moment. We also started our own band called The Last City, which gave me more opportunities to try different creative ideas. And so in addition to figuring out ways to edit our music videos, we were playing music all the time. We figured out our own home recording setup in our tiny little Japanese homes where there's no insulation in the walls and you can hear everything your neighbors are doing. And we had so much fun. I think a lot of my own most, sorry, Adrian, I totally didn't write any of this part by you. Here we are. A lot of my, oh, I lost my train of thought there. Well, my most creative, I think, like violin parts, piano parts. There are bass parts that I wrote and just recorded on piano. I listen back to and I'm like, oh, I did that. That was amazing. And it's because I had the time to try things out, to make some stuff that was really crappy, but then to get better at it. And that, I think, is such a huge gift. After our 2 years spent in Japan, we decided to move to Dallas and while we were here, I learned a lot about myself. We moved to Dallas 10 years ago, and I think there's a lot that we have in common with plants. If you are like me and have a bunch of houseplants, you know that you can water them all on the same day, and you can have them kind of wherever in your house, and they're probably going to be okay. But if you want your houseplants to thrive, if you want the plants in your garden to thrive, you learn what each plant needs. You learn how much water they need, how often they need it, how close to the sun they need to be. I recently got to see I watched a YouTube video on how to care for a particular plant that I have that is like this big. And then I realized, oh, in the rainforest, it grows huge. And I was missing out on the potential of this little plant because I was not taking care of it properly. And in the same way, I think we have the opportunity to learn about ourselves. All of us as humans need some of the same basic things. We need food, water, love, shelter. We just, in order to take it a step further, we have to take the time for ourselves to figure out how much water do we need. Well, not, metaphorical water. And so my time in Dallas, it was when I really started to freelance as a videographer, as a photographer. I had the opportunity to work with other people in the industry who helped to show me different ways of working in this world, who helped to show me what options are even out there for styles of editing and for types of cameras. And that was really, really helpful. But I also started to spend a lot of time by myself, which up until this point, I avoided because I didn't really know who I was. And so I thought I would rather be around other people who I can mirror. And so it was painful to realize I didn't want to hang out with myself that much. But once I started to do it, and once I started to realize, oh, I'm actually pretty cool just the way I am, I found myself growing into more and more potential. I took on as many different types of gigs as I could, and one of the story arcs that I never really expected is getting into documenting regenerative agriculture. My father is a soil health scientist, and he started producing videos about regenerative farmers, and so I would go help him do these shoots, interview farmers about what they were doing to basically help Mother Nature while they were growing our food. And I loved this. I love this format of talking to people about things that were making an impact and then taking the footage and kind of putting it together like a puzzle. And I found that so satisfying, this documentary style, and tried to do more and more of that work in the other types of projects that I was doing. And then 4 years ago, we had our first kid, Oliver. We have another one on the way, growing. And so everything that I had learned so far about myself and about how I grow changed. And I had to learn how to be a very different type of person. I was working and raising a kid, and we were like trying to be flexible and creative and also still pay the bills. But we kept doing music, and to start to stretch myself over the last few years, I've started to try playing solo again. So I've done weddings, I've done things where I'm playing to backing tracks or I'm playing with a loop, and that has been really good for me to just remember that I can play all on my own and it still sounds good, and it's okay if I mess up. Nobody's gonna care or judge me. And then last year, I also started a podcast because I wanted to grow my interview skills. I also really just love having conversations with people on camera. And a lot of times in video work, it's a very specific subject, and I find myself wanting to ask more and more questions. So I said, I'm just gonna do it myself. And so I did a full season of podcasting, It's taking a little hiatus at the moment, and then we're going to do season 2. But it was a really wonderful, it's been a really wonderful series of conversations. And I think as a interviewer and as a conversationalist, I've gotten more confident in those skills. The other really important thing for growth is community. And I think Creative Mornings is, of course, the best example of that. If you think about a plant growing in nature, a single little lone flower is not going to last very long. If you have plants that grow together, they mutually protect the soil. They're going to hold on to nutrients better. The more diversity that you have in that plant life, the stronger they grow, the better they grow. And as humans, we are the same way. We need people in our lives who can challenge us. We need people in our lives who can support us. And when our little flower heads are drooping, we need people who can help just push us back up again. And I'm so thankful for all of the... We're good. I was like, I cannot make eye contact with anybody when I do this part. We've been in Dallas for 10 years, and I would not be the person I am today without my community. And it feels cliche to say, but it's true. It's true for all of us. We all need our people around us. So the big takeaway that I want to give today, and also to show some of my growth, because you've seen some of my early work, is to document your growth. My tagline in Wayfarers Media is document your impact. And I think it's so important to document your own growth, because this is how we see where we've come from on the days that feel slow and the seasons of life that feel slow. If we document our growth, we can look back and say, yeah, it feels slow right now, but look how far I've come. This is a way for us to course correct, because we definitely need to do that sometimes. We're not all gonna just go straight into whatever plant we are without some changes to our feeding schedule and fertilizer type. And I was wondering how many plant metaphors would be too many for this. But we also need to be able to celebrate, and documenting our growth is a perfect way to do that. If we have something that we've documented, whether it's journaling, whether it's social media, whether it's whether it's voice notes. I have really been enjoying going on walks with my dog and just doing voice notes and sending them to friends, but then saving them on my phone so I can go back later and remember what I talked about. Documenting that growth is essential. I've gotten the chance to do more and more of these interview style videos. I call them impact documentaries. And I've gotten to do them for a lot of different people. And each one that I do, I feel more excited because I can see very tangibly how much I've grown. And I think that's also in the nature of the type of work that I do, is that I can physically see it. Whether or not I post it on Instagram, it's gonna be there for me to see. This is my friend Dave. He's finishing up his last book called The River Trilogy. So we went around Dallas and took pictures and video at different parts of the Trinity River, because he talks about water as a metaphor for change. And I love that I get to do these things all the time. I also, as a way of growth, have been trying to put more on social media. So part of it is talking about the things that I'm learning, showing the things I'm learning, doing more behind the scenes. That, again, on the end is my husband, Adrian, with his other bandmate, because he has 2 bands. One of them is our band, and then the other is a kids' music band. So if you have kids, check out Narwhals and Waterfalls, because I do I do a lot of their music videos. But it's hard to start. It's really hard to start, but once you do, it gets a lot easier to document and then to share it. Because really, other people like to see what we're doing, and Another part of my growth has been to put myself out there more for speaking engagements. I've done a couple of pitch competitions. I got to speak at DFW Startup Week on a panel for women entrepreneurs and speak at UNT to their entrepreneurship club. And then recently I got to film at the Dallas Black Tie event, which was huge. And my feet hurt so much by the end, but it was such a fun, beautiful night. And then on the band side, we have been moving a little more slowly since having a child 4 years ago. This is a young video of him. He's so cute. And as you can see, we have still been putting out music since he was born. We are currently working on an album called It Still Amazes Me, and we've just been putting out singles. We actually have one out today. So if you go to Apple Music or Spotify or Bandcamp and look up The Last City, you can be one of the first people to hear today's single, which is called We Could Be Lovers. Ooh. Ooh. But we are also trying to release this album before the end of the year, because at the end of the year, we are actually moving to North Carolina to be closer to family, which we're both devastated and excited about. We have loved our time in Dallas. It's been so good to us, and it's time to grow into a new space. But we are trying to put out this album December 19th. Don't know where September came from. So if you follow us, you can find out when that album release party is going to be and come celebrate with us. All right, that's it for me. My name, again, is Elizabeth. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm so thankful for this opportunity.
Tomorrow feels so evergreen. A racing heart at 17. I'm done with you. They say the love will find a way. Baby, you're my bullet train. I'm never looking back. Even if it's a lie, can it be true to me? I can't deny what the half truth might do to me. In the right night, on the right night, I just need to know, can you find me in this purple haze? Am I worthy of your scarlet grace? I've undressed my secrets next to yours. Think about yourself and you, what has in store in this purple haze. You used to want it crystal clear. Just had to know what brought you here.
I'm scared of being seen by myself, I'm scared of making mistakes, and then even if you weren't necessarily conscious of it at the time, but you did start doing it, like, what was that breakthrough moment for you?
I'm still doing, like, this is the second time I've spoken in public in a microphone without my voice completely just losing its mind the whole time. And like my hands are still, like, the adrenaline rush turns out it's not very conducive to playing violin, but we're working through that too. I think it's still happening. I do think therapy has been great. But really, over the last couple of years is when I made the decision to not let the fear be the reason I wasn't doing things. And one thing I had the realization, I think I've missed a lot of opportunities because I was so afraid of taking them and then, like, being shaky while I was playing and having it sound horrible, which has happened, and that is a horrible feeling. But I've missed out on a lot of things, I think, because of that. And I don't want that to be my future. I'd love for the band to get to the point where we can play some big stages with big audiences, and I'm gonna have to get my shit together to make that happen. Thank you. I forgot, I can cuss, right? Yeah. Any other questions?
I loved your insights on building community and how that has served your creative and personal life. Now that you're moving to a new city, are there any lessons? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Are there any, like, lessons you've taken away from, like, establishing that over, like, 10 years in Dallas that you're like, okay, I have some, like, lessons and strategies and ideas in my head when I moved to North Carolina of, like, how I'm gonna go about, like, establishing a, like, professional and creative community, or do you already have one there?
We know a couple of people already in the city we're moving to, which is Winston-Salem. If you know anyone, please connect us. Unfortunately, the Winston-Salem chapter is currently not running. I have considered that, but I'm also gonna have a baby in May. So I probably I'm not ready for that commitment, but I have started to research different creative groups in the area. Charlotte has a really large creative scene, so if I can, I'm gonna go to Charlotte sometimes. But one of the things that I think that we've learned since being in Dallas is the types of people that we want to spend time with, the types of people who help us to grow, but also who we feel excited about giving to. I've been seeing a lot about how community is inconvenient, and I think that is something that we all need to remember, is that we don't have to have huge communities, but the people who we choose to bring into our lives, we have to be willing to be inconvenienced for them. And they're probably gonna do the same thing for us. And at this point, like, we have a lot of experience with meeting people and also figuring out pretty quickly which people are going to be the ones that we want to bring into that community, who we're willing to be inconvenienced for. So I'm nervous about it because we have spent a long time here growing I feel like a curated group of friends. A lot of it has to do with who's parenting in Oak Cliff, because that is a large part of our community at this point. But yeah, our community here feels curated, so I am nervous about moving to a new space and having to kind of start from scratch with that.
No, I love the insight about, like, having to inconvenience yourself
Yeah.
for that, where it's like, it's not putting yourself out there, it's doing it even if it's, like, not fitting into
Yeah.
your daily life to get over that hump.
Yeah, I think we've evolved out of community-centered living, which is really sad. Like, we are on our phones, we're in our worlds, and it's easy to, like, order food. It's easy to get something sent to your house, and we forget that as people, we actually need to do inconvenient things for each other sometimes in order to build some of those relational foundations that will help us get through harder things. Anything else, guys?
Hi, thank you so much for the talk.
Thank you.
And I love the plant metaphor. I'm going to ask a question in plant metaphor. So in my creative journey, I feel like there was a time that I was a bonsai, like really tightening up and trying to move in certain directions. And then there's some times that I'm just like letting things grow. I'm like, oh, when's the time?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm curious to hear like what's your current direction? How do you balance those two creative energies?
I think a lot of it has to do with you have to, this is where the self-knowledge thing comes in, because some people make really good bonsais and some people don't, and I'm not a good bonsai person. I have pretty bad ADHD that got worse after I had a baby. And so I have to think about the type of person that I want to be and then try to live into that person. I read a book recently called, oh no, what's it called? It's a book for women about becoming better leaders and developing more confidence. And in the second chapter, it talks about your inner critic and then creating an inner mentor for yourself, which has really been a powerful idea for me. And it's imagining yourself 20 years in the future as your most ideal self, and then making decisions today as you think that person would make. And so instead of looking to outside mentors or outside people to make those choices for you, you are turning inside at every opportunity. So that has been something I think that's really helped me. And now I'm thinking about what kind of plant I am, and I can't do it off the top of my head, but I want to. I'm gonna think about it.
It's about playing big.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it is good. Playing Big by Stephanie Moore, I think. Yeah. One more question? Any more?
Why the last city?
There's conflicting stories for this. We chose the name after moving to Hiroshima, and I can't even remember my version of it. I can only remember Adrian's version of it, which was like, just involved like taking a trip outside of the city and being able to see. Hiroshima's a city that's kind of nestled in between mountains. So we were up in these dark mountains looking down on this beautiful city nestled by the ocean. And so allegedly, the phrase, the last city, kind of popped into his head from that scene, I think. So that's where it sounded poetic, and so we went with it. Yeah. It works. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.